where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative podcast here on Blab. This is the show where we have extensive discussions from the worlds of social media, sports, and pop culture. We have a special all-media discussion panel for tonight's episode. I'm really happy with the panel that we have, so I'm just going to quickly go ahead and introduce the panel. First, we have video journalist and author Waubgeshig Rice from CBC Ottawa. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks a lot, Peter. Nice to be here.
No problem. Thank you for coming. I know we've been trying to get you on the show for a while, so I'm happy we're able to hook it up.
Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me. It's a huge honor, man. This is going to be fun.
Perfect. And then we have a good friend of mine and community manager or content creator, RDS. We have Jette. Francis, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the invitation.
No problem. Happy to have you. And then, to round out the panel, we have journalists from TC Media. We have Candace Woodside. Candace, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, and glad to be in the crew tonight.
No problem. So what we do on Popternative is we give you guys a little opportunity to, give a little brief introduction, and, the floor is yours to let us know about anything. So let's start with you, Candace.
Sure. I actually I'm originally from Prince Edward Island, and I now live in Saskatchewan. Have lived pretty much all over Canada, though, so I feel like it gives me a good rounded view of everywhere. I work for TC Media as a journalist and covering all different beats, including sports, and have done lots of different things in my life, but journalism is what I studied, and it's where my passion is.
Perfect. Wob, what about you?
Hey, my name is Waubgeshig Rice. I go by Wob for short. I'm originally from a place called Wissahickon First Nation, which is near Parry Sound, Ontario, on beautiful Georgian Bay. I've been working in media for about 12 or 13 years now. I'm currently a video journalist with CBC here in Ottawa, but I've worked in Toronto and Winnipeg before. And I've seen how social media has really risen up to take command of mainstream media these days and how we've had to adapt. So I'm really looking forward to chatting about that part of our topic tonight. So thanks again for having me.
No problem. Thank you. I'm looking forward to the chats. And Francis, what about you?
I'm from South Shore of Montreal. You'll excuse my English. Maybe sometimes you'll hear my French accent coming in. So hopefully it won't mix up in the exchange. So I'm from Montreal. I've started to work in the social media around 2006. I started my website, was made to promote Quebec's basketball news and events. So I started back then. I had no idea how the internet worked. I used to have only like a messenger. I didn't even know how to download music. So that's how I started. I started the website. I learned everything on the web, and I worked my way up, and I get the chance to work at RDS. For those who don't know, it's the Francophone TSN. So yeah. I'm really lucky, and I also work as a social media consultant, and I help lots of sports federation and organization with their social media strategies. And I've been working also a little bit in the media. Back in the days, I used to work for TVA Sport, who now owns the rights of NHL. So
perfect.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of a media experience as well.
Yeah, Francis and I met this summer. We met at we were both working on an event in the Canadian Olympic Committee. So
yeah,
I was really happy to make the connection. But yeah, Wob, you brought it up a little bit. The topic for tonight's show is media coverage and social media, and we're seeing many can make the argument that new media such as social media has drastically changed how we consume and produce news. And I just wanted to talk to all of you guys about your experiences and what you think about how social media has changed how we consume news. Because I think it's a really important topic that should be discussed. So, Wob, do you want to start off with it?
Yeah, definitely. I first started working in daily news in 2006, back in Winnipeg at CBC. And back then, social media was not on the radar at all. I think it was another year before Facebook really became ubiquitous. But even then, it took another few years after that for people really to sign up en masse and have it become like a real cultural and social influence, right? And then Twitter came around a year or so after that and rose to prominence. And because of that, I think we've really had to adapt in like mainstream, broadcast, print, and online media, just in that we are definitely more accountable to people because they can engage with us on greater levels to a much greater degree. And we, in large part, have to cater to those people, and we have to really strategize and really understand how to deliver our material and our news because if they don't get that information from us, they're going to get it from somebody else sooner. And then those people will look more reliable than we in certain outlets or at certain, plants or organizations, right? So yeah, in the course of like 3 or 4 years, it really changed everything. And you have to be online. You have to have Twitter and Facebook accounts to really adapt and to really be part of that conversation and sort of come across as trustworthy in the viewers and readers' eyes, right? So yeah, it really has changed everything. It's been the proverbial game changer, I guess you'd say. Mm-hmm. And it really affects how we're assigned stories, how we deliver our stories, and basically how we sort of interact with everybody on a day-to-day basis, because it has sort of made our jobs like a 24-hour process, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Candace, what do you think about that?
No, I would agree 100%. I actually studied broadcast journalism at Loyalist College in Belleville, Ontario. And during that time, I mean, I graduated in 2005 and wound up working in the media right after that. There was no social media. I didn't get Facebook until after I graduated college. Thank God. There could have been some bad things on there. Yeah, well, you never know, right? It's college. But it really did change it. And I don't think initially when Facebook came about, people really understood the concept and how it could change and connect people so quickly. And then when Twitter came along, like just to build on what Wob said, like that really was a complete game changer. And, when you go in a scrum now, you have one hand recording what the person that your interview is saying with an iPhone, and then the other hand has another iPhone, and you're, taking a video to tweet it out initially. And to me, that really, you're exactly right. If you don't do it, they're going to look for another source to get that information from. So that social component, really, all journalists are digital journalists right now, or they should be.
Yeah.
Francis, can you speak to this in terms of a sports-led as well, given your position at RDS?
Well, I'm not a journalist. I'm really a social media community manager. So what I do is sometimes I'm the one bringing the news to the journalist who sits right behind me at RDS. They'll be creating the news, but we're there to also watch what's trending on Twitter, what's popping up, what's the news coming up, and we're really on the front line to see. Sometimes we're the one getting the news, even though we're not real journalists. So it's kind of fun, and when there's a news breaking up in the newsroom, it's really something so fun. It's so unique as an experience, because like you can feel the tension, you can feel like the energy popping up, and it's really something fun and something I really enjoy in my work. So yeah, the news and the social media is really going along really nicely. And it's in sports, well, you get the other side. There's not only the news, but there's also living the live event. So it's all bits of news popping up during some sports events. So it's really fun to have the chance to add to the conversation and add value to the people following you on Twitter and on social media by taking the news and giving some analysis to it and giving some emotion as well.
If I could add one thing too, Twitter has announced that they're changing up their timeline or experimenting with that. And I mean, as someone who does look at Twitter and sees that, like Francis was saying about how this news is popping up, like the beauty of Twitter for me is immediacy, and we would lose it as a news tool if they were coming up out of order. I think it would destroy it. I hope they don't do it.
Hopefully they'll find a way to manage to have maybe a real timeline as we know it, and maybe something more like curated with similar to Facebook sometimes, with your interests and interaction. That would be nice if you get both options, I think.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. That would totally defeat the purpose of Twitter. The beauty of it is that it's real time, and you can scroll back on your timeline if you think you missed something. But if it's all out of order, then we would have to strategize in different ways to deliver our tweets, right? And I think we'd have to sort of go back to the drawing board in some ways.
The one thing that happens to me a lot on Facebook too, and if this ever happened to you guys, sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and I'll see stuff on my feed from yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's been happening a lot more than usual, I would say, on my end. And it would be confusing because I would, see an event or something or a show, because I'm really into music, but like I realized that it pops up first on my timeline, but it was posted 21 hours ago. So I can see that, what we're talking about Twitter, I can see that being an issue, and I agree with Wob for sure.
I think there's a weird algorithm with Facebook, and I mean, I think it's based, and correct me if I'm wrong if you guys know, but I think it's based on who you interact with the most. And I mean, that's fine, but Facebook is, to me, not, I never really use it as a news source.
No, I was just mentioning it because it reminded me of what
of course.
said about the Twitter. But yeah, Francis?
One thing with the Facebook algorithm is that it's not only people you interact with, but also like how many times you consume it a day. So if they say the people in general, they open up Facebook around 14 times a day. That's the minimum, the moyenne.
The medium. Yeah.
The middle.
Yeah. So around 14 times a day. And so like if you didn't open it like more than 2 or 3 times, Facebook is gonna give you some news from yesterday because you didn't use it as much. So Facebook knows that, and it'll try to decide if you interact with it really much with a fan page, it'll try to make sure you don't miss anything from that page as well. So it's not only people, it's pages and it's behavior. So if you interact a lot and you only spend time stop when you're scrolling and you watch often some page, but you don't really click, they know it. So they'll try to bring it up to you if you didn't have time to watch it in your timeline.
Rather than Twitter that just has, the people you follow, and once they tweet something.
But on Twitter, we already have like the in case you missed it.
Yeah.
On the phone app, which is kind of fun because it's similar to what Facebook does. It takes like the people you most interact with the most frequently, and people you usually favorite or you mention or anything. So they bring up those news or the most important news as well.
What I also do too is I'll re-retweet stuff all the time as well. Like if there's
you're pretty active.
I do that a lot because if someone missed it, like for example, when we announced this panel, I announced it, 10 o'clock at night last week, but then the next morning I retweeted it like on my account from the Popternative account, and it got a bunch more impressions, right? I've always loved that ability to nonstop, like ability to retweet tweets, like undo and then retweet again.
I find the same too. If I post a story and I don't post it like a link to it during peak Twitter user hours, I'll often repost it with different hashtags or with different mentions even, just to broaden that audience a little bit.
That's the best thing to do, because if it, like, how people use Twitter, use it like many times a day, but 2 to 3 to 5 minutes. Well, depending, because we work in media, so maybe we use it a bit differently. We get it on the computer as well, but people usually use it a lot with the cell phone. So they're on it like 3 to 5 minutes. They do something else. So you need to push the news a lot of times during the day at different times to catch different people.
And yeah, Wob, you're doing a lot, you know, with your position at CBC Ottawa. You're, I'm sure, doing a lot of on-the-go tweeting as well, right? Where you're, you know, going to report a story. You're keeping your followers aware in real time. How does one manage that in real time when, you know, you have a story that's really fresh and, you know, because over the past couple of years, you've created quite a community on there, about 11,000 followers, which is really fantastic. And
I don't know why.
yeah. What goes through the process in terms of, you know, you tweet something out and then, you know, someone retweets it and it blows up, people are asking you questions. I'm sure that can get hectic at times.
Yeah, and Candace sort of alluded to this earlier when she mentioned that you're getting a shot, but then you have your phone rolling at the same time. Like there are events where you might come up to like a crime scene and then police will be giving an update and you sort of can't miss either, right? Whether it's your camera for the actual TV broadcast later or for Twitter like 2 minutes later that you're going to tweet. So it's all about time management. It's all about game time decisions and really understanding what the value is in terms of tweeting something out at a specific time, right? If you're on a breaking news story, then that's basically all you should be doing is just tweeting as much as possible. And if you're fortunate enough to have if you work in TV and you have a camera operator with you, then you can dedicate your whole time just to that. But if you're like a video journalist that I am, who is solo on the scene a lot of the times, and yeah, it comes down to sort of managing that. And it's really about, once you work in news for a long time, and both Candace and Francis probably know about this, well, obviously know about this, is that you know what you're going to put in a story and you know what you're going to leave out. So this just, you have to sort of change your brain around to think, okay, I got to start writing my story ahead of time, or I have to, you know, really think about what the key pieces are for my story as the day's going along, rather than before social media, we would just go gather all the information and all the interviews and everything. Then we'd come back and then we'd decide, you know, what would hit the cutting room floor and what would be sort of the lead items and that kind of thing, right? So it's I think one big benefit is it's allowing us as journalists to sharpen our skills and make those decisions in critical moments. But it is tougher. It's definitely a bigger workload. The pressure is on, and especially if we're the only person at a certain place, whether it's a news conference or a crime scene or a fire or something like that. Yeah. Like we're the conduits for information, right? And especially if no other media are there, like we're the ones who are getting the story. So the added pressure is making sure that information is right. And yeah,
no, absolutely.
A lot of mistakes happen for sure.
What I find interesting too with you, Candace, as well, is, you know, with the verification blue check mark on Twitter's almost making it like, you know, especially for like, because it works out that like, well, now that I think about it, wow, I don't know why you don't have the blue check mark, but I guess that's a discussion for another day. But I read an article a few weeks ago about how that blue check mark for, you know, journalists and reporters, that's almost like, you know, I wouldn't say the word like expert, but that's kind of like the symbol for, yeah, this person is legit, you know, this is like going to be as credible as it could get, you know, in a certain aspect, right? So doesn't that also, you know, is there a connotation of trust that comes into play as well? When, like, even if you're tweeting stuff that, you know, is not part of, you know, your daily, you know, reporting jobs, but if you're tweeting something or you're retweeting a story, you know, there's a trust that I'm sure your followers like there's that elicit from you, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's added pressure for sure. Particularly, like, I mean, during the federal election, and I'm sure Wob, you knew all about this, but you have to be very nonpartisan. Obviously, if you're going to be a credible, ethical journalist, you have to be really careful about who you're siding with, what you're retweeting, are you being fair, all of that. So, I mean, the blue check mark is one thing, but whether you have it or not, if you're a journalist, you should abide by the same type of standard. But I mean, having it definitely gives you some credibility if you're at a crime scene, or if
Yeah.
you're covering court, or if you're covering a fatal car accident or whatever. People know that this is a person who's been vetted by Twitter. They like, I mean, our company, what they did was they applied several months ago and basically said, okay, these are our TC Media accredited journalists. You can do your vetting protocols or whatever for it. And it took months. Like it literally takes months, because I do think that they follow your account and they look at it and they say, is this person tweeting credible information for a journalist, right?
Mhm.
And then like I didn't get any notifications. It just kind of happened one day. And to me, other than getting a bunch more followers, it hasn't changed the way I do anything, you know?
Yeah, I was just curious because, it's something that, when I did my master's in communications at Carleton University in Ottawa, it was one topic that I think, Francis, I think I mentioned this to you like before when we talked, but like I was interested in the research aspect of Twitter and the verification associated to like theories of like status and kind of like the sociological aspect of it, and like because I find that interesting, and you agreeing or disagreeing, there's this kind of storyline or narrative around this idea that the inequality down the middle, you either have a blue check mark or you don't. You know what I mean? What about the person who has a lot of followers that doesn't have a blue check mark, right? I'm not saying I act like that, but I'm sure there's some people who believe that the blue check mark is very important, or elicits some sense of power or status. So I was just curious about that. But continuing on, Francis, got a question for you, and I'm sure Wob and Candace could chime in as well. We've also seen a lot of I wouldn't say there's a lot of content out there. There's so much stuff to absorb, and it's got to be difficult at times to manage and make sure that everything that's everything or anything that is important gets a voice or gets a retweet or a fave. What are some of the tactics that we can use to kind of properly manage to make sure that we are consuming and absorbing as much social media news content as possible, because there are lists, there are ways of searching hashtags. What are some of the things that you've done specifically during your career with RDS or, just social media consulting on the side, Francis?
Well, one of the main things people need to do to make sure they follow is, first, as you mentioned, is try to find the best people, the people who are the most credible as possible. So obviously the blue checks always helps, but there's some really credible people out there with different voices, different opinions, who don't have the blue check. But
like
if you relate to them, the most important is to relate to them and learn through time if they're credible or not, and then you can build your own list and try to make sure that you can follow people and follow the news with as much as effectively as possible. So don't lose any time. So you can do lists on Twitter, but you also can do lists on Facebook, which is really helping me a lot in my work at RDS. I've created the multiple lists for sports references. So when there's a big news popping up, if you want to make sure it's real, it's credible, you just need to watch those lists, and you'll see if a couple of people are tweeting about it, or there's multiple articles, posts on Facebook about it. Well, you're pretty sure it's credible, because we mentioned it's really important to get the good news out. So if people judge, like if ESPN has it on their Facebook page, it's credible. So once we see it from respectable places like that, we can go along and tweet about it or create an article, and that's how I try to do the job. Make sure we get the right story out.
Wob and Candace, could you also speak to this as well? Do you use lists, on Twitter at all? Because that's something I've discovered a couple years ago, and it's one of the best tools. Just categorizing sports, music, social media, and just kind of rolling with it. I just find it so much better and more organized.
Go for it.
Okay. I actually don't use lists yet. I've been meaning to get around to it, but I find like my strategy for Twitter usually is to follow, I guess, the authorities and people of local prominence, because first and foremost, I work for the local news here in Ottawa, right? So that's sort of a smaller handful of people to follow. So I have those people who are on my following list. And if I'm looking for something specific, then I'll just use like the search function in TweetDeck. And if whatever story I'm assigned to that day or whatever story I pitch, I'll start, looking for the keywords and looking to see whether the real people out there are paying attention to this particular issue or this particular story. And that's how I sort of find the real people. But my strategy usually is like I follow, as I mentioned, the officials, the more sort of concrete voices who can verify things and speak to the validity of them. And then I go and look on my Facebook friends list and see exactly how it's impacting people, because at the end of the day, there are more users on Facebook than on Twitter. And I've actually found that I've had more success finding real people to illustrate a certain story on Facebook rather than on Twitter, right? And that also illustrates another conundrum that I think both Francis and Candace also face, is that how you behave yourself on each Twitter and Facebook. Like I feel like I kind of have a split personality sometimes, because I'm a little bit more reserved on Twitter, but I find more of my human contact on Facebook, especially when I'm working. That's when I find my real people, my character interviews, so we call them, right? So that's sort of how I strategize on a day-to-day basis when I'm using social media, but I've been meaning to really get a handle on lists, but so far it's been working somewhat effectively for me. But I mean, there's always room for improvement, right?
There's a lot to do.
Yeah.
I have a very similar strategy to you, Wob. I'm actually not subscribed to any list. Like, I haven't created any. But I also, it's funny, like you can hashtag, iPhone or whatever, and you'll be added to this list of like iPhone experts. I'm like, I'm not an iPhone, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah. I find that I'm a member of some really super weird lists, like cooking experts, and I'm like, cooking for me is like, I don't do that. So
all three of you will probably be added to blab lists. Just letting you know. It might happen.
Perfect.
It might happen.
But I'm like you, like with Twitter, it's always on. It's always like a window on my MacBook because of that immediacy piece. If you check it often enough, something will catch your eye. And like if you do start seeing something breaking from those credible sources, and I hate to use what happened in Paris as a good example, but when the Associated Press started tweeting about it, it was like, okay, things are going down right now. Like, this is a serious issue. And then you can start kind of spitballing and seeing some of the coverage. But then you have to be careful too, right? Like with something that big, and the San Bernardino shootings last week was a very same thing. There are so many varying reports, right? Like one person talks to one cop and the cop says that 10 people are dead. One person says that 100 people are dead, right? Like, so, I mean, you always have to take it like the scene of something that large with a bit of a grain of salt, no matter how credible the account is or the user is.
Yeah, it's good that you also mentioned that too, because that was something else I wanted to talk about too.
Mm-hmm.
With so much content out there and so many people using it, news gets like it's fragile. It's really and it's funny you mentioned AP News or CNN. I find it interesting too that you hear CNN and you right away oh yeah, CNN tweeted that out. They're very credible. There are some situations where CNN have got a lot of heat about some of the ways that they are disseminating content. So I find that is a non-escaping issue we have with what's going to be credible at the time. You might have like Fox or NBC, but like you said, there's so many stories happening. So I kind of, I check it out, but it's really, really tough in the beginning when, like, for example, with Paris, right? The Paris shootings were an awful event that, on social media and Twitter, so much stuff while it was happening was getting posted to the point where, what's credible, what's not. Even the most credible, accounts, they could be wrong, right? Well,
oh yeah, definitely. Another example is the shooting downtown here last fall, October 2014. There was all kinds of bad information going around about like another shooter in the Rideau Center, which is the mall just down the way from the War Memorial. Other info about another shooter driving west down the Parkway and things like that. And all that stuff ended up not being true at all. There was only one guy. But I guess in the heat of the moment, I mean, somebody out on the street or who may not even actually be there would tweet something out, and then a few people pick it up, and then it just snowballs from there. And that's, we have to exercise caution every time we're using social media and we're out there trying to report on what's going on. I was out and about that morning with another colleague of mine, Alistair Steele, and our phones jammed. Like, I guess the network was just too active and we couldn't get on social media. So that was maybe one benefit of that, is that we actually couldn't use it that morning because there was just such an influx of people flooding the network. But yeah, it's you really have to exercise caution. It's you can burn yourself pretty badly if you're not careful.
Absolutely.
I think nowadays the most important is not really the quickness with which you tweet the news, is if you get the right news or not. I think that's the most important thing. You better sit on the news if you're not sure it's credible and you get all the sources. So you better sit on it and wait. Or if you're not sure, the thing you could do is you could try to put it on let's say could be, or could be happening, or like trying to say something is happening, but we're not sure about the sources yet. So more details to coming up. So it's a good way to take part in the conversation, but not making it verified and everything.
Candace,
You don't look like you're asleep then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
exactly.
a good fail-safe for that is just to pick up on what Francis said. If you don't have the information or the facts, you can just be the color person, right? You can tweet what you're seeing around you, or what you're hearing, or what you're smelling if it's a fire, et cetera, et cetera. And that does add value because you're there to be the eyes and ears for the people who are following you, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. But okay, so segue this a little bit. Still, on the topic of a lot of information being out there, how fragile social media is. When huge news happens, I tweet. All three of you follow me on Twitter, and I have you all on Facebook, so I'm sure you've seen. I posted and tweeted something yesterday about clickbait, and how I thought that clickbait. I tweeted out clickbait is not journalism. Now, are you guys familiar with? Are you familiar with like what this term of clickbait, right? Because people know what it is, but sometimes they don't necessarily are familiar with the actual term like clickbait. Do you guys know what that is?
Well, yeah, clickbait is multiple things. You got clickbait like there used to be on Facebook, like you're trying to click there and you need to like the page or something to get access to the content. That was one kind of clickbait, but Facebook really trying to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And there's more like clickbait, like they're trying to tell you, oh, this is an incredible story.
And then you click it, and
click here, and you need to watch this. This is crazy. And then you get there, and it's like it's not worth it, So that's clickbait today. Like it used to be worse. Now it's just a waste of time mainly.
And the second one, Francis, is what I was referring to. And there have been we're not going to discuss names or anything, but there have been some websites and some blogs lately that have been in a lot of heat lately for a lot of clickbait and a lot of and a lot of what I find interesting too is there's some few websites that will tweet out some stuff and it's an unbelievable headline. You click it and there's nothing there. I even find that surprising. Because it happens today too, Wob, where you click the story and there's nothing written. There's one sentence. At least you'd be expecting an article that's not good or not saying anything, or the same thing being said over and over again, but it looks like a story and it's just like a couple of paragraphs, right? But nowadays it's shifting more to you click the article and there's nothing written. It's just like one sentence. It's one could make the argument that it's disgraceful.
I'm not arguing for it, but I can say with certainty the only time I personally would ever do anything like that, and it happened not long ago. There was quite a serious car accident on the Trans-Canada Highway here, and I went to the scene, was like the only media on the scene, got my photo, come back, 2 lanes of the highway are closed, whatever. So, obviously with social media, it's great, but I mean, the goal of any organization is to redirect back to a website, right?
Yeah.
So, you post it on your company's website with the photo, with heads up. The lead is just that there was a bad car accident.
Yeah.
No details, more information to come. That's the only time I would ever.
I'm not talking
exactly,
about that though. That's perfectly understandable in my situation. I'm talking about a website that a headline that says Tim Hortons is forced to change their names in Canada, and you click it.
Right.
One sentence saying some people think that Tim Hortons should change their names in Canada. That's literally what I'm talking about, and they get thousands of clicks, and it's just it's crazy. So no, Candace, I'm not talking about that. That's perfectly understandable, and that has to do with breaking news. No, wow, that's also breaking news, right? And you're gonna update that story when you have more.
But I mean, technically, if you have a headline that's like Trans-Canada Highway shut down, blah 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 blah, casualties, that's essentially clickbait when you have nothing there too, right?
Yeah.
It's so weird because the industry is changing so much and so rapidly. Every media outlet is struggling to figure out what their identity and what their role is online. Like CBC is going through it right now. They've been going through it for years, and that's exactly the thing. Like there are like tutorials and strategies around writing headlines just to generate traffic, right? To get eyeballs on the webpage. And I agree. Yeah, like just you run the risk of making people feel duped that they're being in just to click on something, and you may lose their trust eventually. So thankfully, I don't have to make those decisions. Like that's at a higher management level than me. But I think it's something that you have less credible. I don't want to say less credible, but maybe untraditional news sources who thrive on that kind of thing, and then the more traditional ones, the long-standing sort of media organizations in Canada are trying to emulate that in some way, but also maintain integrity, for lack of a better word. So
right, but I mean, I'm sure you've seen it, guys, where people will comment and say, "But you have no information here," right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So we do get it, and I do think, Wob, to your point, that it is because of those less traditional media sources that cause that negative type of reaction.
Exactly.
And Francis, this happens a lot in sports as well, and I'm sure we can have discussions about this for hours. About so many sports bloggers, so many journalists, are now given the opportunity to create their own blogs, their own like journal articles as well, and as it becomes a competitive market, in sports as well. We're seeing it, and they could see maybe clickbait. Because would you I want to ask the panel if you think this is clickbait or not, right? I see a lot of websites just tweet out that new trailer for Star Wars came out, and it's like nothing's commented on it. It's just the trailer, right? Is that journalism? Or is that just sharing a link and masquerading it to look like a journal article? Like that's the one thing I'm finding interesting about journalism, right? Is that a story? Like you go on these websites and it says Star Wars new trailer. You click the link. You're hoping there might be a write up or someone describing it, but it's just a link to the trailer.
depends on the journalism.
Yeah, I think if there was some reaction from fans attached to that, then I think that's totally legit. That's an okay out in that sense. Like you can link to the trailer, but yeah, I mean, if you're just doing it to get the clicks, then yeah, it sort of cheapens, as we were saying earlier, your own reputation, I guess, in some ways, right? But you know, we're content providers, or we should be, and we should be adding some value to content that's not originally ours, right?
It's almost sometimes like the website is being posted like you would post a photo on Twitter or Facebook, in my opinion. Sometimes that's what I'm saying, and I'm speaking more to, you know, a lot of, you know, sports little blogs that I see as well, that, you know, it's a really cool headline and I'm really interested, and I click it and it's just a video. That's cool. Show me the video, but give me a little description of what you think of the video as well. I'm interested.
Yeah, that drives me nuts too.
Francis, what do you think about that? Because that was kind of directed to you as well, being with RDS.
Yeah. Well, it's content creation, you know. So as Wob mentioned, you need to add context, add value if you want to keep your watchers, keep your followers interested in your brand. So if you always put out content with poor value, like only the link, you need to have like the best headlines to make sure people are going to click on it. But then you need also to have the best content behind that headline to make sure people, the next time they're gonna want to click on it again. Because every time I see some link from somebody, I'm gonna see the story like 4 or 5 times after in my timeline, and sometimes I'll only click the 4th time because I know that fan page, that media outlet is gonna have the best story behind it, because they're gonna twist it with a little something. They're not just gonna post out the video. They're gonna add a little color to it. They're gonna have some color commentating. So that's what we want. So obviously, people, there's some creators out there who's more lazy. They're just gonna put out the link to a certain video and just clickbait a little bit, trying to say, oh, this is the best highlights you'll see this week and everything, and then you click and like, it's a sports highlight. I've seen 1,000 like last week. So we need something more nowadays. And what people need to understand is all those media outlets, all those fan pages, all those blogs, we all fight for the same eyeballs. Like whether it's information or sports or entertainment, people all fight for the same eyeballs, for the same attention from people. And in the timeline, whether it's news or sports or cats videos or fail videos, you need to try to differentiate yourself from all the stuff. So of course people are going to try to go out with great eye lines, but you really need to back it up with great content behind it. So it's not only putting content out there, but trying to add value, trying to add your color to it.
It becomes fuzzy, right, though, Wob? Like it like to find that balance and to kind of, you know, make sure that, you know, consistent content is being pumped out. It's very difficult in this day and age.
Yeah, and especially as Francis alluded to, the animal videos always go crazy no matter what. You can have this like weeks-long project of original journalism that you work on, and it might not get as many hits as like a horse walking down Bank Street the next day or something like that, right? So it's a struggle, you know, for sure.
Nowadays, even the media outlets out there, even the information, they need to try to find a twist to stand out and trying to make people pay attention. Like one example I could put out there is just when Adele went on a show like a couple of weeks ago. She sang "Hello" with an orchestra playing with first grade instrument.
The Jimmy Fallon, yeah, Jimmy Fallon, yeah.
So great.
Exactly. So we've all seen the Adele video. We've all heard the song, but why are we gonna watch it again? So Jimmy Fallon created something. Well, his team created something that they knew were going to go viral because it just had a little twist different. So it's the same thing nowadays. Creating content for information or anything, you need to try to twist it up, trying to make sure you get the attention from the people. So there's always a way to do that, and you need to remain on brand and trying to target the right audience. So obviously there's some people out there who still are interested in great journalism and real news. So you just need to try to talk to those people when you create your headlines.
And I think too, it depends on your content matter. I mean, sometimes things are super sensitive. And like, for example, say it's a story about suicide or about mental health or whatever. I know that there's still, despite all the best efforts, there's still stigma there. Some people won't retweet it or share it on Facebook because they just don't want to have that show up on their timeline or on their newsfeed. And that can be frustrating too, especially when, like Wob was saying, you work for a week long on something and then people just don't want to share it because it's hard to talk about or hard to look at or whatever. So, I mean, sometimes that isn't always a good measure of how it goes over either, in my opinion.
Yeah, true. But nowadays, Facebook takes less and less importance in likes and share, but more and more into click through. So if your story get a lot of clicks through on Facebook, Facebook is going to give it a good reach anyways, even though people don't share it, because as you mentioned, sometimes you're gonna go and you won't necessarily share it or like it because it's deeper. But Facebook is able to tell, like, if people liked it because they spent a lot of time outside of Facebook watching the story. So nowadays it's more and more complex how Facebook decides if a story gets traction and a lot of reach on Facebook because of different aspects other than likes and share.
I know, absolutely. Well, I think we had fantastic digital dialogues this evening, and I thank all three of you for joining me for this podcast tonight. So I think we're gonna wrap up this episode of Popternative. But before we do the closing remarks, I just wanted to ask, because I never had a chance to have a thorough dialogue with Wob about this. But Wob, you've recently been an author. You wrote a book called Legacy. Could you, for 2 minutes, kind of, a couple of minutes, just briefly discuss the book? I'm sure we'd love to hear a little bit about it. And congratulate you on that accomplishment, because that's fantastic.
Well, thanks a lot, Peter. I appreciate that. Legacy is a novel about a Anishinaabe or Ojibwe family, like my own culture, and just how they're working to deal with some hardships in their lives by turning back to their traditional ways and really figuring out who they are as Indigenous people in modern day Canada. So it follows a bunch of siblings through different cities and just how they're trying to reconnect with who they are. And I've been fortunate to work as an author on top of being a CBC journalist, and CBC has been very supportive in allowing me the time to do this kind of stuff. And I'm actually on leave right now from CBC. I have been for the last 4 weeks to write another book, and I'm going back to work on Monday. So it's kind of crunch time to get this last project done. But it's just a really awesome extra creative outlet. And I think we, all four of us, are storytellers, and our jobs don't stop just at the work we do in broadcasting or in journalism, right? Like we have a hunger for stories, and I think we all have our extra ways of telling extra stories. So that's just mine, I guess.
No, that's really
how do we buy your book?
It's online. It's on Amazon and on Indigo, on Chapters Indigo. It's in some stores. It's through a really small press called Thetis Books in Penticton, BC. So it's not a huge distribution, but it's out there. It's on some shelves anyway.
Nice.
For sure. So, Candace, Francis, closing remarks. Anything you want to say, Candace?
Thanks for having me. This has been really fun, and I always enjoy chatting with like-minded people with whom I can have some intelligent discussion. So thanks, guys. It was a pleasure.
Perfect. Francis, anything from
Great
you?
opportunity for me to practice my English and getting to know you guys better. It's fun to have to see other people from the community of journalism and social media around Canada. Here in Quebec, is mostly I follow mostly French and francophone, but I'm mainly in English on the web. So it's fun to see different perspective and see how the media out there in Canada is going. It's a hard time for everybody. I think the TV business, there's some disruption, and the web coming up, and like all the media outlets out there are trying to find ways to monetize web, even though nobody found the way yet. So it's really hard for everybody, for all of us out there. So it's fun to see we all have the same point of view, trying to bring value to people and trying to bring great stories out. So hopefully we'll find a way to keep all those people working and see how it comes up. I'm looking forward to it.
I think
Le prochaine fois, on va parler en français, oui.
Yeah.
Mon français, c'est pas pire, mais c'est comme une français, c'est comme une 7 sur 10. C'est
Yeah, it's not bad. Yours too, Candace.
I'm not
Bob,
even
anything
gonna,
you want to say in French?
I'm not even going to insult your language by trying. So.
Well, very quickly too, I think two words that were mentioned, by Francis and Wab, really to highlight, some important discussions we had: value and storytellers. And I think that was really cool that we were able to have discussions about that. So thank you. I'm really sure our viewers really enjoy these dialogues we had. So this has been PD Beats. I'm signing off for Popternative right now. Thank you, Francis. Thank you, Candace. Thank you, Wob. If you missed this episode or any previous episodes, you can watch replays on our YouTube page as well as our SoundCloud page. You can like us on Twitter at Popternative and Facebook.com/Popternative. You can give us a like. Thank you all and have a great night.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.